Hey guys, it's Natalie. Welcome back to my channel. Today I thought I would talk to you guys about my writing process and how I write and some tips and advice that I have for people that are trying to write or revise or edit a book during a pandemic, because emotions are high and so is our stress. I don't know about you guys, but it's so hard to write when you have a lot of like emotional baggage. Like, I feel like I'm already investing all of this emotional baggage into characters, so when I have my own, it's like, it's too much. It's like when you're going through something really tough and your friend is, and you have to try and balance like dealing with your own issues and supporting them, so it can be a hot mess. It can. I thought it'd be really cool to talk about my writer's process and some of the things that I do, some advice, I guess, too. Maybe I'll do a little Authortube little series or something. I don't know. Let me know if you would be interested in that. But before I get too rambly, let's just go ahead and jump on into it. So the project that I'm working on is a YA to potentially adult fantasy. So this is a high fantasy novel that is based on a like pagan faith, and it is about these three countries and the interactions between them politically and romantically through marriage alliances, and then also the main focus and the point of views in this first novel, for which what I hope to be a duology someday, is these two brothers. So you have Alaric and Valoran, and I've mentioned this plotline before, like years ago, I believe. She's still going, we're still chugging along, and basically through twists of fates they kind of end up swapping positions, but not quite so literally, and it's a really interesting book that just kind of goes from there. And there's magic, and there's adventure, and there's political intrigue, and there's romance, and there's just a lot of different things that happen, and I don't want to give too much away because, you know. So that is essentially the work in progress and novel that I have. I'm at probably like 130,000 words right now, and I'm still adding on. I'm adding on a whole other point of view for Alaric right now, so it's gonna be huge. But I do plan to cut it down, and if it ends up being so big, I may turn it into a trilogy instead. So I'm just, again, we're deep in the writing revision work, so it's a lot to process and constantly think about. So now that you guys kind of know what I'm working on personally, I thought it'd be cool to touch on my routine and my schedule of writing and the supplies that I use and the groups that I'm part of to support me in my writing, and then also some advice that I have for fellow writers, because we're all in this together. Okay, so the first thing that I really want to talk about is my writing schedule or my routine. And so I think when it comes to a writing schedule, you gotta do what works for you, whether that's writing for 20 minutes a day, whether that's sitting down for 3-hour chunks once a week to just knock out a bunch of work, whether that is, you know, doing a certain setup for writing versus school versus whatever it may be. I think whenever you can find the time to fit it in is when you should do it. I don't necessarily believe in having to write every day, even having to write every week if you don't have the time for it. I think you really need to learn to be flexible with that, because it is something I think that is easy to feel overwhelmed or feel like a failure if you're not keeping up with. And so for my writing schedule, it is something that I just include in my Google Calendar. So my Google Calendar I have a bunch of different organizational tips, and I think I'm going to do a back to school organization video as well, so I'm not going to show you that today. I'll show you my calendar in that video. But essentially I have a little time block and like a little mini schedule just for my writing and editing, and then I have one for like YouTube and my podcast, and then school, and then work, etc. And so my one for writing, I have little blocks, and I have these separate blocks that I have automatically every week, and I can move them to whatever days, whatever times I want, and they're usually an hour or two chunks of time, and I have 4 or 5 of them throughout the week, and I can put all of them on one day and just do a full day of writing. I usually do like Tuesdays and Thursdays are like heavy writing, and then a little on a Monday or a Friday or whenever I fit it in. But I like this so that way I can kind of move around and adjust where I'm writing and how I write without having to actually cut down on the amount of work that gets done. So it allows me to be really flexible with my schedule. If I have an appointment, if I have an unexpected work shift that I'm covering, it helps me to be, again, flexible and move those around without being too overwhelmed. So that's kind of how I schedule in writing. Again, I think it's really about being flexible, making it work for you, especially if you are not a full-time writer. If only we could be so lucky, but a lot of us aren't. So this is, I think, more realistic. So some of the supplies that I like to use are, I'm going to talk about 3 big ones. Supplies slash, I don't know, one of them is a group, so it's not a supply to me, it's people. But anyways, the first thing I think I'm going to talk about is the most basic, and I think the most essential. You can do this on hardcover, you can do this on like a paper notebook, you can do this on an online spreadsheet, but having some sort of book or like know-all for all of your characters, all of your background info, all of your history is so important. When you are building a fictional magical religion, you really got to keep everything in check, because there are so many rules and so many things that go on and rituals and all sorts of stuff that I'm trying to keep track of so I don't go insane and have a bunch of like plot issues. And so this book is really helpful for that. It has a skeleton outline, which is what I like to call my little, like, very basic. Each chapter covers this topic. This is how the plot is elevating. The highlights are the really big points, or the things that I need to make sure I have enough foreshadowing for so that it flows smoothly and that the pacing is okay. And then I also have, which I guess I'll talk about next, is some notes from my writers group that I am in that I received for our most recent meeting, which were actually really helpful. And so with all of this in mind, I do really love and suggest having a group of peers that you can talk to and communicate with about writing. I think even if you're working on your own project, having insight from other people is so helpful. And that's why we do beta readers when we get to the point where we're ready to share our book and get the final tweaks and fine editing done, because we really want to make sure it connects and that people get the point and that people understand the story. If there is sort of magical laws or guidelines, that those are followed and those are clear to the reader, and just you want to make sure it's enjoyable. And I think that having a writers group that can help you along the way, I think can be just as, if not more, beneficial than having just your beta readers towards the end of your writing journey. The last piece of supplies and equipment, etc. for this category that I use is Google Docs. I love Google Docs for writing. I can write anytime on any of my electronic devices, my phone, pretty rare, but I can, my laptop, my iPad, on a school computer, wherever I am, whatever I'm doing. If I can connect to the internet, I can connect to Google Docs. So it's pretty helpful. And so my advice for my lovely fellow writers is pretty simple. And I just have kind of 4 main points that I want to touch on. So the first one has to do with what I was talking about with my routine, is to find one that works for you, whether you do that by finishing this many chapters per month, writing for this many hours a week, doing this many days of writing per month, whatever it is that works for you. I think having some measurable goal is really important to keep you accountable, but as long as it's in a way that is flexible for you. If you have to write at 8 a.m. every day of the week for like 3 weeks on, 1 week off or something, and if you wake up late one day, you wake up at 8:30, you're kind of screwed out of that hour you're writing every day. And so I think being flexible and compassionate to yourself is really important with writing, because I think in order to stick with it, you need to not intimidate yourself with the schedule you're placing for the writing itself. So that kind of bleeds into my second piece of advice, which is to be flexible, like I said, but make sure that you are keeping yourself accountable with some sort of markers or finish dates, completion dates, so that way you can stay on top of it. I personally like to use Asana. So Asana is really great because it'll give you a due date and reminders of things you need to be finishing and to keep you accountable. And so I think this is always a really awesome thing to do. Or you can set little reminders on your phone to be like, hey, you have 3 chapters due at the end of this week. Pick up the pace. And so I think having some sort of accountability, whether that's a partner, whether that's a buddy, or whether that is an app that tells you to pick up your slack, whatever works. My third piece of advice is definitely to confer with fellow writers. One of the things I love about BookTube and Authortube, and why I have made a reappearance, is because it's great and I love all of the people in this community. I will leave links to some really awesome Authortube creators down below that you should check out for sure. I personally love watching their videos and I find them really helpful and really funny and amusing, and I think you guys will too. And my fourth and final tip for you guys is to be gentle with yourself if you can't keep up with the pace you've currently set and be willing to adjust and to kind of knock yourself down from your very ambitious goals if you're feeling overwhelmed. It's still a pandemic. So if you aren't feeling up for writing right now, it's okay. Don't feel stressed and don't feel like you have to push yourself harder than you need to, because odds are if you're pushing yourself too hard and you know it, your writing is going to reflect that. You want to be really invested and engrossed in what you're creating, and I think that writing out of a place of excitement, curiosity, and love is much better and much more productive for your work than to be writing out of a place of stress and anxiety and obligation. Of course, we all have bad days, and I think it's important to trust yourself and your intuition on whether you should push through or hold back, but this is your friendly pandemic reminder that because we are in a heightened state of emotional distress, you may need to pull back more often. And that's fine. So with that, I'm going to wrap up this video. I really hope you guys liked these tips. Hopefully you found them helpful. I actually also have a writers group, which I mentioned through Discord, that I really love. And for anyone that feels like they might want to join or are curious to learn more, please let me know. We want to be able to have everyone meet up at the same time, but we do have people from various time zones. So if you are curious about joining that writing group, please let me know. Feel free to message me on Instagram, which will be linked down below, or just leave a comment on this video and I'll talk to you. We'll find a way to chat. So yeah. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it. Please give me a thumbs up if you want me to do a writing series where I just will post more videos related to my writing. And yeah, if you guys like to see my face, feel free to subscribe so you can see more of it. And with that, I am going to sign off. So I'll see you guys next time.